Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Juan the Yarn Addict and I'd like to welcome you to another session of Whipping It with Juan. Whether you're new here or you're returning back to the channel, thank you so much for checking out today's video. These Whipping It with Juan sessions are sessions where I sit back, I work on my whips while I talk to you about all the things. I become your crochet buddy for about 45 minutes to an hour, so if that is of interest to you, please sit back and enjoy the video. Before we get started, please remember to hit the like button. Consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already, and then of course share the video. I would definitely appreciate the support. So as I always ask for these sessions of Whipping It with Juan, what is on the hook? And so for this session, I brought out 3 projects. I have decided on which one I'm going to work on, but let me show you the 3 that I pulled. The first one, you can kind of see it here. This is my 2-bit granny, and I just have one more color after this before it's finished. I have the second round of this very, very light blue colorway. This is Lion Brand's Schitt's Creek in the colorway Bebe Blue. It's a very thin 4, if I'm being honest with you. It's very thin compared to Loops and Threads Soft Classic. It's a 4 nonetheless, but it's a thin 4. So once this colorway is done with the 2 rounds, and I do have enough yarn to go around twice, I have one more color to put on here, as I said, and I can't really decide on which colorway. I'm thinking that it needs black. I'm not sure. I may go off and pick another color, but maybe another dark color right here to just finish off the blanket. I think that's what this is asking for. So anyway, the second project that I brought out is my vintage Spectrum corner to corner. You can kind of see it here in the corner. This is one of my long-term projects, and it's come a long way. This is where I'm at with it. Super, super nice. Now, if you've been around, you kind of know the story about this, but if you haven't been around, let me fill you in quick. So I frogged this out twice. So I began here in the corner, obviously, and I worked it out to about where this purple is. And somewhere in between the corner and this purple, I had Mexicana yarn in here. And I realized that that Mexicana yarn, even though it was old yarn, it's still being processed and made and manufactured and all the things. So this entire blanket is supposed to be a vintage, variegated, discontinued colorway kind of project here. So that yarn was still being made, so I frogged it all back, and then I reworked it and realized that, you know what, the one colorway that I did have in here was entirely too thick. Like the yarn was just too much. I had like several rows. It was really, really thick, so I frogged that back behind the scenes. I didn't even record it on camera. And then finally I went the full way, and so now here we are. I'm probably a quarter of the way finished. I'm not exactly sure how big this is going to be, but if I'm going to make this like a queen size blanket, I'm about 1/4 of the way done. Or 1/3, maybe 1/4, 1/3, somewhere in the realms of that there. And I'm working this up with a 6mm US letter J hook, a prim hook, as well as my 2-bit granny, same hook, prim 6mm US letter J. The third project that I have here, and it is the one that I will be working on, is my Twins Crossing blanket. So I have a pattern on my channel for both left and right-handed crocheters. This is Twins Crossing, and that's what it looks like here. And I'm using this new yarn. Well, the yarn itself isn't new, the concept is new. So this is Karen's Slice of Anniversary Cake, and the colorway here is Prismatic. I do have the larger cakes of this. I wanted to work this up to see how many cakes I'm going to need for a Boggy Creek blanket. My guess is 4, so I do have the 4 here. I've shown this yarn on previous videos. So I have the Prismatic paired with a solid, and the solid is called Cherry. And then I have this variegated colorway here, or striped. I'm not sure. I'm leaning more towards variegated because there's no rhyme, no reason to the way these colors are changing. So Book Club. And then the 4th and final colorway for this blanket is going to be Golden. So what I may do is put the golden after this first colorway here, Prismatic, and then border the blanket in this red. I think that's what I'm going to do. Anyway, the hook that I'm using for this project is my Susan Bates 8mm US letter L And before I started this project, I even mentioned this. I was going to hook up to a 9mm hook just to make sure that I had enough yarn to stretch it out to make sure I hit 40 by 40. But I thought about it and I said, you know what? Maybe I can use another design that would allow the yarn to stretch instead of like making bigger stitches with a bigger hook and lacy and loose, which is fine. I just thought maybe this pattern will work. And so far, it's working out beautifully. I'll show you again. This is twins crossing. And in the tutorial, I believe, I mentioned how to carry up the yarn so every other round is a different color. You don't necessarily have to do that. You can keep your yarn on your hook. You can make it a complete solid. You can use a striped yarn or a variegated yarn and not have to carry your yarn. And what I mean by that is, after you're finished a round, you leave this yarn hang here, you grab another color and you loop the new color on, and then you carry this yarn in the next, like every other. So you're carrying this working yarn up. You don't cut off at all. Anyway, if you ever wondered how that is actually done, that tutorial will show you how to do it. So let me assume the position. Okay, so I create a table here so I can see my stitches, you know. Anyway, I really do like this in that the back part of a double crochet cross to me is more attractive looking than the front. It crosses on both sides, obviously, but on the back part of the stitch, the legs are more prominent. You can really see that cross. So there's the back part of it, and then like here's the front. I know to some it's really not much of a difference, but for me it is. Anyway, how are all of you guys? I hope you guys are well, and very curious to know what you guys are working on, how many projects you have on the hook right now. Tell me all the things in the comments. I'm very curious. I do read the comments quite frequently, even after the video is posted, you know, a few days after, several days after. I've had people comment on my videos 6 months after it's been posted, which I think is absolutely amazing, which goes to say that these Whipping It with Juan sessions sit in a file, so you can binge watch these all day. If you're looking for an all-day crochet buddy, you can literally put the playlist on and just let it play, and then I become background noise where I talk about all the yarny things while you're working on your projects. I think that's amazing. Oh, I think that's great. Anyway, I'm really enjoying this pattern. The double crochet crosses, it's something that I had to get used to. Obviously, you know, it's literally 2 double crochets that are crossing, but that second double crochet, you really have to carry that yarn around your twins. And if you don't do that, it actually pulls on your project. So it's almost like you're making like a spiked double crochet, but not really. You're pulling that loop around the stitch. But once you get the hang of it, it's a piece of cake. The one thing that I do have to get used to is the cadence of switching from hook to hook, because you have the prim hooks, they're like hybrid hooks. So it's a little bit on the tapered side, a little bit on, you know, it's got a little bit of both. So when I use that for an extended period of time and then I come over to this, it's an adjustment on how I manage my yarn. Anyway, the same is the case for when I'm using Susan Bates and then I go to my Clover or Moore hooks. It's just that the way that the yarn holds on the hook is slightly different from hook to hook. And so for the first few moments of crocheting with a different hook, it's like, you know, you're trying to get your head around the stitches and figuring out how to like hold your hook. Do any of you guys have to adjust mentally? I know I do, because I have slip stitches and my yarn keeps like slipping off the hook. But after a few moments, once I get it, I'm usually good with it, you know. So I actually thought about this. I'm not going to do it, by the way, but I thought about it. I thought about actually going to Michael's and getting 2 more of these cakes. So this cake here is the prismatic. I thought about grabbing one more, maybe making a boggy with just prismatic and red instead of using all of the cakes. But then I thought to myself, this is a great way for me to like destash. You know, it's literally all the colors, no rhyme, no reason. But I'm not sure yet. I feel once I get this cake completed and I get the solid on, I'll be able to see what that looks like on a larger scale, and then I'll make the decision at that point. But I really don't need to buy more yarn, especially with the yarn that I have here, and I'm looking to work through my stash for Camp Boggy Creek. So if you're not familiar with what Boggy Creek is, I'm going to list a bunch of channels in the show notes. They meet up every week, and you know, they talk about all things boggy, and people send donated blankets to Camp Boggy Creek to Nancy over at She's Got Yarn Too, and she shows those blankets every week, and I think it's absolutely amazing. The cause is great. I mean, just the fact that, like, I mean, I don't know every single detail. I can never remember it. I try to remember the details of it, but I just can't. And I have no understanding as to why I can't remember all of it, because all last season for Boggy Creek, I sat up on panel and I heard Lynanne talk about it, and I can pick up bits and bobs of the different things. I know it's like a foundation that Paul Newman and General Schwarzkopf and a few other people all came together and, you know, initiated this whole thing, and it's a place where kids can go and feel like a kid. These are children that have like illnesses and things like that going on with them. I think chronic illness is one of the things. Anyway, they go to camp for a week and they have this amazing time where they get to forget about their illness, and they just experience what life is like as a kid. And as a memento for, you know, their experience or their time at Camp Boggy Creek, they get one of these handmade blankets from us. And I hope I explained that right. And again, I'm going to tag the channels in the show notes for you guys to go and hear all the things. But that's the gist of it. And so I make these blankets. We make these blankets. They have certain measurement parameters and things. So if you're making a square, the magic number is 40 inches. 40 inches wide by 40 inches long. Okay. If it's a rectangle, it's 35 inches to 40 inches wide, and then 40 to 50 inches long. So, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, that's a lot of real estate space to get creative. And here I am not crocheting again. I stop crocheting and I start talking with my hands. I can't help it. It's a really, really bad habit. And let me get this corrected. Okay. I even did the wrong stitch. Anyway, last year, between me and my mother, we put out somewhere in the realms of 50 to 60 blankets. And this year, I have a whole bunch of them already made, but I reset my counter. And I'm trying to hit the goal of 50 blankets. I don't know if I'm going to hit that goal, but you know what? I'm going to really try and work towards that goal. They're going to collect blankets until the end of December. So if you're interested in making a blanket, feel free to check the show notes for the information, like where you can send your blanket and the deadline and the measurements and all the things. All of that will be in the show notes for you. And so while this year they don't really have a number goal of how many blankets to receive, like last year we had fill that truck, right? We had hashtags and all the things. And I think the number was 3,255 blankets. I think that's how many we collected last year. A lot of blankets, 3,255. So as I was saying, this year we may not have like that magic number, but yeah, just send, make and send, make and send. And the other thing that they're really pushing this year are these necklaces, and I know that there's a name for them, and for the life of me I cannot remember. It may come to me mid conversation, but You make these like pom-poms with your hands, not the pom-pom maker. You make them with your hands, and you attach them to like this necklace. And I know someone somewhere, many of you guys probably, are going to sound off in the comments and tell me what these are called. Anyway, they're really pushing for those this year, and so yeah, I'm going to be doing them. I know there's a tutorial out there. I believe Billie, the Crafty Floridian, has a tutorial out there for these. And again, the name of these necklaces are on the tip of my tongue, and I'm not going to just blurt out what I think it is because I think I'm wrong. Anyway, I'll put all of that in the show notes for you as well. And I was just thinking, like, in terms of like postage, it's much more economical and easier on the wallet to send these necklaces than these blankets. Now, I mean, they still need blankets, right? But if postage is of consequence, maybe send necklaces instead of blankets. I'm just saying. And I did it again. Wrong stitch. So it's this double crochet cross round. Sometimes I forget that I'm on that round, and then I do twins in a stitch. And then I look and I'm like, wait a minute. Nope, nope, nope. Wrong, wrong, wrong. Frog, ribbit, ribbit. So I haven't made any of those necklaces yet. So last season, I went out and bought a pom-pom maker, thinking that I could just go ahead and use that to make these necklaces. I can't get over the fact that I can't remember the name of these necklaces. I'm having one of those moments. So anyway, I purchased the pom-pom maker. I brought it home. I think I even showed it on one of my videos. And I quickly found out that that's a no-no because it's very difficult to take the strands out. So the purpose of it all is that for every act of kindness that is done at the camp, they make an exchange. I think they take like one of those little whiskers off of the pom-pom and they tie it to the necklace. And the goal is to get rid of all of those strands there and to just have a necklace of all these little ties, like a necklace of kindness, if you will. And so yeah, if you use the pom-pom maker, it makes it very difficult to pull those strands out. So they're actually suggesting that we not use the pom-pom maker, that you actually use your hands and you construct this necklace in a way that the children are able to just remove these strands and tie them to the necklace. And I believe it's an exchange. I don't think they tie it themselves. I think that someone else does the tying. Yeah, I believe that's how that's done. Anyway, if you were not here last year, I went to Boggy Creek, and I have to tell you, it was such a life-changing experience for me. Because, for one, I already love children. I am one of those folks that just loves kids. I love the loud noise and, all the hooping and the hollering. I don't mind that at all. Anyway, I go there and between looking at all the buildings and all the murals and all of the quilts that are hung on the walls and all of the pictures of all the wonderful children over the years, it's really a life-changing moment. Like you get to see what your work is actually doing for these children because, for us, we're just making blankets, but for these kids, they tie their experience to these blankets. And every time they look at this blanket, they're going to remember the week that they had at Camp Boggy Creek. And thanks to us for making these for the kids, So that's why it means so much to not only me, but to so many other people. And I mean, if you're on the YouTube streets for any extended period of time, you're eventually going to hear of this, like Camp Boggy Creek, So, and this is all brought to us, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Nancy over at She's Got Yarn Too. This began a handful of years ago where she started it on her channel, and you know, it started with just a couple blankets, and then it just worked itself up to last year 3,255 blankets. And those necklaces that I can't remember the name of. I can't remember the name of the necklaces. Oh, I hate that I don't know the name. I have half a mind to pause the video to go and research and look really quick. I can't believe I can't remember the name of this. It's one of those things where, you know, I didn't plan on even talking about it, but this is the great part of how this all works with Whipping It with Juan. I just literally sit here and I talk about whatever comes to mind. So this is not scripted. I do not have any bullet points to discuss when I come on here. I literally come in here, I grab my work, I turn the camera on, and I start crocheting. That's literally how this works. And yeah, so when I have moments like this where I can't remember, so I'm living the full 46-year-old male like mindset. Like I just cannot for the life of me remember. I think age is creeping up on me. Or I'm just having one of those moments, you know, which it's fine. And watch, something is going to just pop off in my head and I'll have the name of it right after all this is over. It's literally on the tip of my tongue. Anyway, so as I mentioned, I didn't make any of those last year. This year I will be making some. I think it's a great way to stash bust. So if you have those little yarn balls that are just sitting at the bottom of your sacks of leftover yarns, I'm trying to see if I have, no. It's usually when you don't need it, it's all around you. But then, yeah, when you're looking for it, you can't find it. Yeah, I just found it. It's right here. So all of your leftover yarns from various projects, not this. This is what's left of the corner to corner. I have to put that on there. But anyway, use the leftover yarns from various projects. No rhyme, no reason. Just grab a few colors, do the things, and make these necklaces. I'm going to have to watch that tutorial again. It's been a while, and yeah, it's a great way to stash bust, I feel. Now, I don't know how fast making these... I don't know the process of how this goes. Like I said, I'm sure the tutorial's not long at all, and I'm probably making it out to be like more detailed than it really is. I mean, we're literally making these little wispy pom-pom things, you know? Anyway, this project does grow pretty quick because you're just doing twins in a stitch or in the space and then double crochet crosses around it. That's how the name Twins Crossing came about. So one round is twins, 2 double crochets in the spaces, and then the next round is double crochet crosses around the twins. Twins Crossing. Yeah. It didn't really take off like I thought it would. I mean, it's there, it's evergreen content, but like something so fast, fun, easy, and simple. You know what it is, I think? I think it's the fact that like I showed how to carry the yarn, and it's not really a popular thing. Like, fast, fun, and easy is what a lot of people like when it comes to crochet. Not everybody, but a lot of people. And, you know, carrying up the yarn just seems very complex, like crocheting squares, like join as you go. It's easy, but, you know, there are steps involved where you have to really, you know, think about how you're planning out your project. And since it's not autopilot, I don't think a lot of people run to it. And I think, you know, this might be the case where, you know, there's some thinking about like, okay, at what point in that stitch do I stop to carry that next yarn from the previous round up, you know, and how do I crochet it in such a way that it's not visible, because you have to sort of kind of hide the yarn. Anyway, if I made that in like a striped yarn and redid that tutorial, I think more people would watch it, because you don't really have to worry about carrying up that yarn, you know? So, I don't know. Maybe I'll just make a new video, Twins Crossing, and then just do like a striped yarn, because the overall effect that this gives with striped yarn is pretty awesome in my opinion. I just like how it very randomly has these crosses covering the other colors. I did a cross when I was supposed to do the twins. See? Some sort of concentration is required when you're changing stitches every other round. Let me just make sure that I didn't mess up anywhere else. Okay. And spot checking is a very good habit to have, by the way. I mean, I'm sure many of you guys already do this. I highly recommend that when you are working in the round, like before or right after you turn a corner, check your side. Because I would rather frog a side of the work than an entire round, especially when the blanket grows and it's pretty substantial. Could you imagine making a queen size blanket in the round and then noticing 2 sides ago, okay, so you're here, 2 sides ago, literally the other side of the blanket, there's mistakes. And ones where you're going to need to frog all those stitches to get back to it. And I know there's plenty of people out there that would say, you know what, I'm just going to leave it. I'm too far removed from where the accident happened. So I'm just going to leave it. But for me, I would need to frog that. And since I'm one of those people that cannot just leave mistakes there, especially if I know that they're there, yeah, I'm going to need to frog that all back and fix it. So spot checks, very, very important when it comes to crocheting projects. Just spot check, look for landmarks. And what I mean by that is, like my corner chain 2 space for me is a landmark. I know that every time I get to this space, I'm going to do 2 doubles, chain 2, 2 doubles. So every time I hit a landmark, I look back to the last landmark and I look in between. And then I keep going. I don't necessarily stop and hold it up like this. I will literally just take my eyes and look down at the work and then go back up to where I was. You know, there's really no need to just, my mom calls it drama. She's like, there's no need to be dramatic about it, Juan. You don't have to hold your work up and look at it like this and like this. When you spot check, just move your eyes, not your hands. So that was the advice that I got from my mother. I can't remember how long ago she gave that advice to me, but it hit home, and I haven't forgotten it since. I think it was during my winter stitch crochet along. So if you're not familiar with the story, let me fill you in. So winter stitch 2024 was my very first crochet along. So that season, which by the way, every season I put out a project like that, like a big project for the season. So winter stitch 2023 was my first project, like right after I started my channel. Anyway, I was hosting a crochet along and a make along at the same time. And so I mentioned this many times that I've had to recrochet entire weeks of projects. Unfortunately, I didn't learn my lesson because the spring crochet along, same thing happened. I had to recrochet entire weeks. It took me a while to pick up what I was doing wrong, but I figured it out. Let's rewind back. So winter stitch. So it was literally one of those things where we spun the wheel told us the stitch, we put the stitch on the blanket. Okay. So for week three in particular, we had the cobble stitch, which, I mean, okay, required a specific like stitch count in order for it to really work, you know? And I wasn't experienced enough as a host to edit and really think about what it was that I was doing. I literally just put it on there. I put it on there the way I would if I was, you know, just doing it for the first time. Well, anyway, we move on to week 4, and in the middle of week 4, I noticed that weeks 1 and 2 weren't looking so hot. Specifically, week 3, okay? And that cobble stitch really just puckered out in all the worst ways. And we were so far removed from, you know, just saying, stop the press. We need to figure out something about this cobble stitch, even though the mystery stitch Crochet Along situation was literally based off of the wheel. So regardless of what we thought, it had to work because, the wheel told us it needed to go on there, you know. Lessons were learned. And so while I was crocheting, I would literally make this huge bunny ear and I would go like this and I would stretch it just to really look at my stitches because I didn't want to have to go back and, delete and re-record the video. I would have to do that like several times. Anyway, in doing that, I stretched my workout, not realizing that everyone who's watching me isn't stretching their workout like I am. So my work looked absolutely fine. Like I can, I think I've shown it several times where my cobble stitch is perfectly flat. That's because I stretched it from the East Coast to the West Coast. Everyone else who did it, they didn't do that. Unless they realized it puckered and then they were pulling. But if you didn't realize that it was supposed to be pulled, you just left it as it was. And so week 3 was very, very puckered. Anyway, I'm doing all the things here in the squirrel's nest, preparing for the tutorials, and I'm doing this, that, and the third. And my mom just comes out of nowhere and she's like, Juan, no need to be dramatic about it. Just use your eyes, not your hands. Keep your hands right where they are. Just look down. It's not that far. She literally said that. And then ever since then, it's stuck and I just can't seem to forget it. So when I hit a landmark, I will drag my eyes over and I'll look and then I'll keep going. And she's absolutely right. There's no need to, move your hands if you can literally see what you're working on. But, it's very habitual. It's a habit-based situation. So anyway, I do really like this particular pattern. It's so simple. It's a 2-round repeat and it does work up really, really fast. I feel it works up faster than the traditional granny stitch, only because the granny stitch is 3 double crochets, like 3 peas in a pod, right? 3 double crochets, 3 double crochets, so on and so forth. Here, it's twins, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. So it's, you're going in that same situation, but 1 less stitch, So at least mentally, it feels like it's going a lot faster because that particular stitch is done. You're moving on to the next stitch, so on and so forth. So yeah, I'm really liking that. And the other thing that I really, really like about working in the round for me, and I mentioned this before, I prefer looking at the fronts and the backs of my stitches. I don't want to look at a project and see an entire front unless there are ridges and there are specific stitches that require this particular project to have a front and a back. But if you're using universal stitches, why not flip them and put them both on both sides, So that's why I turn my work a lot. I like to see the fronts and the backs. So, but with a 2-round repeat, you're literally seeing the fronts of one particular stitch and the backs of the next stitch. But still, I prefer it. I think it looks really, really nice. The only drawback to flip and work is you get this one stripe in the corner, because when you get to the end of the round, you're chaining and you're flipping your work and then you're going back in the direction you just came from. So if you're ending the round in yellow and then you're turning your work, you're going to layer that yellow instead of going around. You're layering it and you're going back, so it creates that stripe. You can kind of see how it's starting right here. But the fun part about working with striped yarn is it's okay. It's very acceptable because, variegated striped yarn, that's one of the pluses about working this project in this way. Because it's allowed to be striped because the yarn is striped. When you're working with solid yarns, I like to change my colors at the end of the round. So, keep going in the same color and then change colors. Don't change colors mid-round, if that makes any sense. So, yeah, very, very nice. This colorway right here, the colorway I have on my hook right now, it reminds me of a seafoam green. Very, very nice. I like this color a lot. I wonder if they're going to have solids of all of the colors here in the variegated yarn. Probably not. More than likely they picked like the popular ones. Like they have red. Now the display that I saw at Michael's, they have, I believe, 1, 2, 3, 4 different variegated colorways and 4 solids. So from what I remember, I think I only remember 3. So they have the cherry red, they have the golden, which I have. They also have a purple, which I'm very surprised, guys, that I did not pick up the purple option of the solid and the variegated yarn. I'm shocked, actually. But I wanted to try something different, and I thought it would be too expected for me to just grab the purple. I wanted to grab the purple, but I said, no, don't do that. Think outside of the box, try something different, because you're not making it for yourself, you're making it for someone else. So the purchase that I made, even though it was like a yarn review for the channel, I had Boggy Creek in mind the minute I saw this yarn. So yeah. Now I mentioned earlier in the video that I have my own anniversary cakes. It's behind the mannequins over here in the corner. And so when I'm ready to do my own project, I will go ahead and use my own yarn for myself. But these little slices, these are for the kids. Now, I only have 2 colorways. I say only, like, these cakes are huge. Anyway, I have 2 colorways, pebbled path. So you have the grays and the blues and all that. And then I have prismatic. I have this exact colorway, 2 each. Because I think 1 cake for me is not enough. You're going to need 2 cakes to make a decent sized blanket. But the fun part about these slices, and I think it's actually it's genius actually. So, if you use 1 anniversary cake, it does give you like a Boggy Creek sized blanket. It really does. However, if you're making something slightly larger than Boggy Creek, maybe you want like, I don't know, a twin size blanket, but you don't necessarily want anything too huge like a queen size blanket. Then perhaps use 1 anniversary cake like the original size, right? And then grab a few slices. Maybe you need half of the anniversary cake, in which case you would grab 2 of these little skeins and then use the bigger one, So it really caters to different project sizes. And so I really like that idea. The other genius idea about this, guys, the solids. I'm so excited that they have solids identical to the way that this yarn is. I'm very excited about that. And I hope that that does not go away. Just because, anniversary cakes, like I just mentioned, they're big. And, it takes us a while to work through that yarn. Some longer than others. But either way you look at it, I want to know that I'm going to be able to go to Michael's, and pick up this on a whim, and not have to worry about grabbing 8 or 9 of them in one fell swoop because they may not carry it or they may not have it. I have no idea if this is a temporary situation or if it's going to be permanently there. I have no idea. But I hope that, if anything, they make it a regular occurrence. Even if they take it off the shelf, my hope is that they bring it back so that, we can go back to working our cakes and use the solids to really accent these colors, Anyway, 40 inches by 40 inches, it does come very quickly when you're using a bigger hook. The one thing that I really want to stress when you're working with thicker yarn, and I mentioned this on a few of my lives, take a break. These thicker yarns can really do some damage to your wrists, your forearms, your elbows, if you're not used to working with thicker yarn, or if you're crocheting with thicker yarn for an extended period of time. Like, it's different when you're using thick yarn for amigurumi because the projects are smaller, you naturally take breaks when you're doing amigurumi because you have to stop and like assemble this and stuff this, so you're not going consistently. For us blanket makers and shawl makers and all of us who make these bigger projects, if you're using thicker yarns, you have a tendency to be crocheting there for hours nonstop on end because we get into the motion, and we just kind of sort of forget about how long we've been doing this motion. For those of us who make blankets regularly, I know for me, at one time, I crocheted like for 3 to 4 hours nonstop with super bulky number 6 yarn. And I even noticed it like in my elbows and my wrists. Um, so just from experience, take a break, allow your wrists to breathe and, stretch, do all the things. And by no means am I giving you any sort of like medical advice or anything like that, but just use your common sense. When your hands are tired, listen to your body. Take your breaks, make sure that you're stretching so that you don't overuse or overextend anything that's going on, So if you do that, you'll be able to crochet with thicker yarns for, the future. Because there are many people out there who have come to me and said, hey, Juan, I used to crochet with super bulky number 6 all the time. And I had to stop because my wrists, or I had to stop because my elbows would hurt and my shoulders and all of that. And, I feel that part of why they're saying that is because when they were using the yarns, they were really going in. They were, having all the fun with it, not realizing that their body was saying, hey, I need a break. I need a break. Please stop crocheting to let my hands like breathe. So, yeah. Listen to your hands. Another great piece of advice that I can give you is posture matters. When you're crocheting, and I'm guilty of this, I will sit back and I'll slump down into my chair, not realizing like the state of my back or where my arms are placed. There's many YouTube videos on like best practices, but for those of us who, again, make these bigger projects and we spend hours and hours at a time in one place crocheting on a project, really think about like where your arms are sitting. Think about the shape of your back. Are you leaned off to the side onto a pillow for an extended period of time? Are you leaned onto the arm of a couch? Are you using that as support? Do you have pillows behind you? Do you have a pillow behind your neck? Like, really think about your posture. And, the best practice is make sure that, one, you're comfortable. You want to make sure that you're in your most comfortable state, whatever that is for you. I mean, again, not medical advice, but, my advice to you is just be mindful of how you're sitting and how long you're sitting that way. So, yes, just make sure you're being mindful, because if you're sitting wrong for a long period of time, you're going to ache. It's going to hurt, and you're going to be like, you know what? I crocheted all these hours, and now I don't want to crochet anymore for today or whatever because of how I was sitting. You don't want that to be the reason. At least for me. I mean, and that has happened. This all comes from experience. I've had some days off from the day job. I think it was in 2023, before the channel, and I put on Lost, the movie series. It was 8 seasons, I believe, of Lost, and I had this thing back in the day where I would put on a season of a show, and the goal was to start a project, episode 1, season 1, let it run through, and finish the project by the time the series ends. And I crocheted a king-size blanket and finished it with 8 seasons of Lost. Anyway, I would spend hours just sitting in the same position, not realizing that sometimes my posture was off. Like I was leaned onto the side of the couch. I'd put my leg up on, the next cushion on the couch, so I'd be slumped over to the side, not realizing that it's fine you know, for the moment, but to be there for like 6 hours crocheting, not moving, yeah, it does a toll on your back. So, yep, from experience for sure. And, you know, I have to be honest with you guys. I have to really start paying attention to my crochet while I'm sitting here, because it's great to talk to you guys, but like sometimes I get so involved into a conversation that I forget, like, one, you're supposed to be working on your whips while you tell us all the things. It's kind of the point of whipping it with Juan, right? Otherwise, it would be yarn talk and all the things. Which I don't mind that either, you know? But one really great purpose of having these videos is that it helps me move the needle on my projects. I mean, I'm already crocheting off camera, right? But what's more is, I mean, for the better, obviously, is that I can move the needle just that much further by carving out time of my day to record and chat with friends and chat with just new people who are coming onto the channel for the first time, and they realize, you know what, they have somebody with a similar interest, and yeah, I thought of the same thing, or wait, I didn't know that even, you know, you discover things. And anyway, the point of all of that is I need to be more mindful of my own work so that I can continue to move the needle on my projects. So where am I at here? So what I'll do is I have this side and this side to go, and then I will wrap up this session with whipping it with Juan. So I noticed with this slice of anniversary cake, and maybe the same applies to those larger cakes. So interior, the inside of the cake, the fibers feel a little different on the inside than they do on the outside. I don't know if it's the stiffening agents. I don't know if it's the tension, like the overall pull during production. I'm sure that the machines go super, super fast with winding the yarn. I'm wondering if the tension sometimes on those machines are too tight and it causes the yarn to pull, which then in turn makes the yarn thinner. Because right now, this feels like a bulky 5-weight yarn. It feels very similar to Premier Puzzle. And I mean, I'm not mad at it. I really do enjoy Premier Puzzle, but this was supposed to be a super bulky number 6, not a bulky 5. So I don't know. I'm going to try, like I said, I'm going to work with all of the cakes that I got the other day. But if there's something consistent with how that feels, like the interior of the cake feeling slightly thinner than the outside of the cake, you know, that there's something to be said about that. The other thing, and the reason why I mentioned stiffening agents, is it feels softer on the inside than on the outside. The outside feels just a little harder, more coarse than the inside. And not by much, but enough for me to notice. So, yeah. How many colors are in this blanket? So we have white, purple, pink, red, orange, yellow, seafoam green, and gold. Light blue and dark blue. There's 10 colors in here. Wait, let me see. Let me do this again. White, purple, pink, red, orange, yellow, gold, seafoam green, light blue, and dark blue. 10 colors. Wow. That's a lot of colors. 10 colors. I love that. And you know, when I first got Prismatic, I got it because it was on sale, the bigger cakes. But when I got them, I said, you know, Juan, you're getting these cakes, but you have absolutely no idea what you're making with them. You know, my first instinct was to make a granny, but that's just so predicted. I mean, I have a super bulky number 6 granny square blanket. I worked them up with the Caron tea cakes, and it took 12 tea cakes to make my queen size blanket. Yep, 12 of them. And I bought them regular price. Yep, years ago. Regular price. I mean, back then I think it was $10.99, and now it's $12.99. So inflation and all the things, but yeah, $10.99 is what I paid for those, and I needed 12 of them to finish that blanket. And I thought about repurposing the blanket, but I said, you know what, Juan, you spent like 120 bucks on that blanket. You worked really hard on that. And what show was that I watched? It was one of those things where I started season 1, episode 1, and then I finished the end, like by the time I got to the end of the blanket, the series was done. Orange is the New Black. That was the show I watched making that blanket. It was a really good show too. I was like, I had to stop. It was so good. I had to watch. I'm like, I need to be crocheting, but wait, I need to see what happens. It was so good. I'm like, you need to be focused. Maybe you need to put something else on that will take you away from the TV show so you can concentrate on your work. But see, outside of that, I really don't watch much television. I mean, I used to use it as a goal, as a benchmark. Like, okay, I'm halfway through the series. Am I halfway through the blanket? You know. But yeah, nowadays I don't even watch TV. Like, I think in a month's time, I may have had 2 TV sessions in an entire month where I'm actually watching like a show for longer than like an hour. Just twice. Yep. My days now, like nowadays, I spend my time um, watching my own content back. I'm trying to critique my own work, and then find ways to improve. And then I'm also watching my favorite knitters. I love watching the knitter podcasters. Oh my goodness, it's so much fun. As a self-taught knitter, like, I'm a sponge. I'm listening and I'm watching all the knitters just talk about like all the things. And so it's helping me with my vernacular. It's helping me with the verbiage and the vocabulary and, the cadence of like how long, it takes to, bind off a particular project, or, how tight is too tight with your stitches, and then the purls and the knit stitch and like the ribbing and just random things. So much fun. I spend lots of time watching them. So let me just get to the end of this row. I don't like stopping mid-row. I've never been one of those. Guys, I just don't really care for that. Get to the end of the row. That way, when you pick it back up, you're starting fresh. Let's make a bunny ear here, and I'm going to show you my work for this session of Whipping It with Juan. I'm proud as punch. You can kind of see the stripe I was talking about there, but that's okay. It's fine. The rest of it is striped. And here's the back. I should cut that tail, right? That tail is sticking out like a sore thumb. Let's just trim it. Okay, perfect. So there's side 1, and here is side 2. Super, super fun. So that is it for this session of Whipping It with Juan. I really hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please be sure to do all the things. Hit the like button. Consider subscribing to the channel. It's absolutely free to click that subscribe button. It doesn't cost you a thing. And then, of course, share the video if you can. I would greatly appreciate the support. So until next time, that is all from me for now. I'll see you later. Bye.